Hey, thanks for joining me today. We are taking a look at what to do when a friend of ours is in pain. How do you handle that? Sometimes it's harder to deal with the fact that someone you love is in pain, even more than our own pain. There's an amazing gospel I found really helpful for that. It's the story of the centurion's slave. Now, Catholics know this story really well because the famous line in it we say, not just at Sunday Mass, but every single Mass all the time. It's the famous line of, "Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof." Look at the dynamics of this reading. It's really helpful because I think what often we do when a friend of ours, a family member is in pain, we can either run away, distance ourselves, or we can try to fix or just take away the person's pain, insert ourselves into the situation, and that can be a huge burden. And now you've got, two people suffering instead of one. Look what happens here. The basic story in Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 and following, if you want to follow it and take a closer look at it. Basically, the story is that this Roman centurion is really an outsider, right? He's not a son of Abraham. He's not a Jew. He's not an Israelite. But his slave is suffering from paralysis and in bad shape. What does he do? He recognizes his inability to solve the situation, and so he goes to Christ and says, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, suffering dreadly." End of sentence. So that's it right there. You see this pattern happen a lot in the gospel. I think there's a deep spiritual lesson in it. Go to God, and having seen and noticed exactly what the problem is, state it clearly. You know who else does this? Think of the Gospel of John, the wedding at Cana. The Blessed Virgin Mary says, "They have no wine." So again, that attitude of I need to control everything in the world and control this. This is painful for me. It's painful for the person I love. A lot of times our prayer is not so much, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed and suffering dreadfully," full stop, but "Lord, here's what I want you to do. Fix this, fix that, do it on this time. Here's how I want you to do it. Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's what you're going to do." And that's how the prayer goes. There's no surrender to the divine love or the divine providence in that. Here's how Jesus responds. "I will come and cure him." Again, it's so much like the wedding at Cana story. The Blessed Virgin Mary says, "They have no wine." And it's a little bit of different dynamic there, but it leads to the exact same thing. Immediate response. God moves, right? God is always more desirous to heal and bring about wholeness and to console even than we are. But the prayer here is drawing the centurion himself into this dynamic of trust in God. That point I just made is precisely what the rest of the story unfolds. And then even though Jesus just said, "Look, I'll come and cure him," but then the centurion launches into a speech. And it's this really interesting moment in this story. You think he'd say, "Good, I got what I want from God and I'm going about my life." He launches into this speech, which is just basically saying, "I understand your power. Look, I have people. I'm a boss. I tell people what to do. They do it. I say go, he goes. I say come, he comes." But then he's saying, "You're infinitely more powerful than I am. Whatever you say will happen." And by saying that, he's not just stating a fact. I hear this as it's not even an emotional thing. He's just saying, "I recognize your divine authority. Whatever you will, whatever you say becomes reality, and I submit to your authority." The centurion himself is being drawn into the realm of the divine providence and the divine love. Now, so I would say step one is go to prayer, state exactly what the problem is. Secondly, make an act of confidence in God's greatness and glory. "Lord, I desire this for this person. This is what I see happening in my life. This is the painful thing I see happening in the life of someone I love. But anything you want, Lord, will happen. And I trust you completely," right? That's what's implicitly in what the centurion is saying. And instead of going off, Jesus stops in his tracks and says, "I've never seen faith like this," right? And then Jesus says, before the man is healed, the slave is healed, Jesus says this beautiful line about, "Many will come and recline with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the banquet in the kingdom of heaven." So everything in our life that seems broken or wrong, finally, the goal of all human life is to recline at the banquet in the kingdom of heaven, right? The slave is eventually going to physically die. but God is using the pain in the slave's life to draw the centurion into the eternal banquet of God. Finally, that's what Christ wants to do with every single one of us, even when we're in pain, because other people we love are in pain. So try this prayer. Someone you love is in pain. Don't necessarily try to fix it or take away their pain or run away. Go to prayer, name specifically what is so painful, and then make an act of faith in the divine providence and the divine power. God bless you.